We are celebrating Black History Month here in the city of Tyler, and I'm joined by two folks that I have been privileged to work with for the last couple of years. Current City Councilman Ed Moore is here with us, and former City Council member Darrell Bowdre here with us today to talk about Black History Month and the things that we're doing here in the city of Tyler. And we've had some fun working together the last few years.
We really have.
A lot of fun, a lot of fun.
We now I know there was a program before I came along, but and I want to talk about those as well. Talk about some of the things that we've been doing, working together. But I'm very excited about what we have coming up, and this was sort of your brainchild. Tell us about the event coming up February 28th at Liberty Hall.
Okay, well, Bob, first I'd like to say Councilman Bowdre and I are back together again.
The dynamic duo.
Dynamic duo, right. We've had a lot of fun doing this program. But what's coming up in February, the last Saturday of this month, we're going to talk about the Greeks.
Okay.
If you're not familiar with that, I think it's exciting when we talk about the Greek culture in our community. It's something that's been laying dormant. A lot of people don't know what that is, but I would advise those that are listening today, if you ever seen the movie Stomp the Yard, it would bring back what we're talking about when we talk about our Greek culture, when we're talking about the different fraternities and sororities that we have in our community, and they do a great job. And so now is the time that we expose them and let the community know what they're doing in our community. So I'm looking forward for it. It's going to be great.
Fraternities and sororities were typically kind of kept to themselves, but did great things in the community as well.
Yes.
And this is a chance for them to tell their history and kind of highlight what they do. And then we have some surprises in store.
Well, we're not going to tell them the surprise. We're going to let them come out and see that. But you're right. We want to highlight the history, what they do in the community. A lot of them, most of them do scholarships that we're not aware of. And they do a whole lot in the community that's been maybe kind of like a secret. But this program is going to let people know about the end results of the fraternities and sororities in our community, and I'm excited about it.
Very active too, because I don't know if folks realize how many folks are participating in this in the community, not just in the African American community, but across the city of Tyler and all of East Texas in the colleges. Very active fraternities and sororities here in East Texas. But I want to first of all plug the date and time of that. That's Liberty Hall, February 28th at 7 p.m. Not a very long program. Come out and fellowship and have a great time and learn a lot about these fraternities and sororities. But I want to take a step back in time now. When I first came on board at the city of Tyler, one of the first projects that was handed to me was to work on this with you guys, this program that we do every month at Liberty Hall. And probably the most fun I've had on this set at all has been interviewing you guys that first year when we talked about the Chitlin Circuit and the entertainers that came through East Texas.
Absolutely.
And you guys got in here talking about the music and the artists and the people and
I think we started singing a little
we
bit.
had a little duo going.
I believe you guys did sing a little bit. Will we be blessed with that
None
again
of
today?
that today. Maybe Ed will do a Greek step like
Yeah.
No,
Oh, yeah.
no, I don't
Have
know,
you been
man.
practicing your
No,
stuff?
no, they don't want it from me. But yeah,
Well, let's take a look back at some of those and talk about, first of all, the entertainers that came through. I know that you talked a lot about entertainers, Councilman Bowdre. Tell us about some of the entertainers that you remember seeing growing up.
Well, I didn't grow up in the Tyler community, and so any information I have comes from listening to older people, many of who are gone on, who did get to experience the Chitlin Circuit as it came through Tyler and East Texas. You know, Ray Charles
Absolutely.
was one of the big names that used to even come to Tyler and stay at the Alfreda Motel there on Morris Street in North Tyler. Ed would probably know because he's older than I am.
Yeah, right.
Some of the other performers that used to come by, but let me just say that the music that they created helped to define particular sounds in East Texas. Tyler, East Texas is a bedlam for the blues.
Yes.
And much of this was born out of the exposure that this community had and this area had with the Chitlin Circuit. Wouldn't you say so?
Oh, yeah. And like about Councilman Bowdre was saying, you know, I'm from Tyler. And basically I tell everybody, I grew up on the cuts. And that's where we had a lot of the entertainers would come and perform at the Harlem Theater. Not only that, on Texas College Road, there was a club named Club Delisa. Many of those entertainers performed at Club Delicia. Now, I was underage, but I was old enough to go and peep around the corner and peek through the cracks. And, you know, when you had an entertainer come to Tyler, there was posters posted in the community.
Right.
Bobby Blue Band, Little Milton, Johnny Taylor, Otis Redding back in his day. I recall living on Palace Street. We lived across the street from Escarita. Probably a name that most people probably don't know, but he was an entertainer. Little Richard came to Tyler, Texas. So back in the day, we had an influx of good gospel and rhythm and blues that was on the chilling circuit. And I think in one of our highlights that we did highlight Willie Neal Johnson and the gospel keynotes.
That's right.
And when I think about that, I think about the little duet Council Baldwin and I had from Willie Neal on one of his famous songs that he used to sing.
Yes, I remember that.
Brings back a lot of memories.
Right, we had some fun with that.
Oh yeah, had a lot of
some
fun
good
with that.
memories there.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found fascinating is you and I took a little trip up to around the old Alfredo Hotel.
Right, Alfredo, right,
The
on Morris
sign
Street.
was still there.
Still there,
Yeah,
still there.
yeah.
Morris Street. That's
And
right, Alfredo.
we talked about that, and you showed us where some of those old clubs were. And then we sort of transitioned into the businesses that year. We
Right.
talked about the businesses and the music. And while we were there, not too far from that old Alfredo Hotel sign, was a barbershop that you remember going to as a child.
Yes, yeah, it was Hampton Barbershop right there on the corner, basically of Queen and Palace Street. And the young lady that we interviewed that day was a graduate from Morgan's Barber and Beauty College, and unfortunately she passed away the year after we made the film. But I forget her name, but she was there for over 25 years.
Yeah.
Cutting hair, which was amazing.
Right,
And
some,
the building right now, the building is still there.
Yeah,
the building's still there.
Is it still a barbershop there?
No, it's not a barbershop. It's just a closed building, but it's still, in the community, I guess, as a landmark, but it's still there.
So many landmarks in that part of town, and one of them, though, is the Barber College. You mentioned that, and that's right downtown on the square, and was a big first, not just for East Texas, but for the country.
Morgan Barber College, and I remember Council Baldry telling us where he was out of state, and the name Tyler Barber College came up. So, I won't mind if people would tell that story again, because it was very exciting.
Well, I mean, the name, first of all, if I would go out of town, be it Chicago, Detroit, the East Coast, if I would say the name Tyler to a certain African-American, especially a barber over 50, 60 years old, they would immediately start talking about Tyler, Texas is the place that they learned to cut hair. Mr. Morgan became actually, as I understand it, Tyler's first black millionaire.
Really?
He had the office, or rather the school here. I think it was also in North Tyler at first, over by Bethlehem Baptist a church. You still see the rocks on the corners there that were the dormitories back then, and they then later moved downtown. But he also had a location in Houston, Texas, and Manhattan, New York City. And any black person that wanted to cut hair, learn how to cut hair, had to come to Tyler, Texas in order to learn that trade. Which is why there is still a tonsorial atmosphere around Tyler, Texas. You can still get the best haircut in somebody's backyard on a Saturday morning or somebody's mother's kitchen, because these young men grow up with that influence and with that culture, and I think that's very unique for Tyler, Texas.
Let's talk a little bit about how unique it is for anybody, but especially at the day and age when he did this, to become a millionaire, to have locations of a college all over the country, and to be an African American man at that time.
Well, it was unheard of, but I think with all due respect, we have to give some credence and shout out to Mrs. Morgan.
Okay.
I think, as I understand it, the year that college opened, or prior to it, was when the state of Texas began requiring barbers to pass a test.
Okay.
Mr. Morgan did not pass the test. Mrs. Morgan passed it.
Oh,
and
really?
as a result, they were able to to do business, to open up, but it was based upon her passing that test
Wow.
that first time. Isn't that what
There
you
you
heard?
go.
Yes,
Is
at the
that
barbershop, right?
Yeah.
Basically in her name. Yeah.
Little known fact
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
I don't even
Behind
think we
every
covered
great
that.
man
Yes,
Great- is a
is a
absolutely.
greater woman. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
But when we mentioned Morgan, and I can recall I was think 14 or 15 years old when he passed away. And that
Okay.
was a sad day in Tyler, Texas. But what I want to talk about was a lot of people might not realize his funeral was at Texas College in Gus F. Taylor Gymnasium. And it started on a Friday morning with the viewing of the body, and it lasted all the way until that Saturday when they had the funeral. And that was something big in Tyler, Texas, especially to take place in North Tyler. And I never will forget that because that's part of history.
Right.
Part
It
of
is.
history.
It is the
Yes, sir.
passing of a
Passing
Tyler
of
legend.
Passing of the first black millionaire in Tyler, Texas.
Wow.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, moving ahead now to what we talked about the second year that I
Okay,
worked with you
right.
guys.
Okay.
We had the program entitled Heartbeat of Our Community, where we talked about the folks that help take care of your heart in the physical sense, the
Yes.
doctors, and in the spiritual sense, and that was our churches. And we happen to have a pastor here with us right now, and that would be Councilman Bowdery. And we talked about the heartbeat of our community. Talk about the churches in Tyler, Texas, and their role in the African American community.
Well, I don't think enough can be said about the influence that churches and religion and pastors have had, not just on the life of black Tylerites, but the life of all Tylerites. We have so many churches that are well over 100 years old within our community, both in the city limits as well as those that are from we say the country, the rural, the outskirts. That's very important because still on every Sunday morning, there are a lot of people that hit those curves on those farm to market roads that populate churches on the outskirts of Tyler, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
But the influence, of course, is blended when you look at the schools, the colleges. All of this ties in because Butler College, Texas College, and I'd even go as far as to say Jarvis and Hawkins are all church-related schools. So it's certainly wrapped up and tied up in that church not only became the religious center, but it was a social center. It's where, especially during those early decades of the 20th century, when blacks were not allowed to do so many things publicly, the church took up the slack. So it became an educational center, it became a religious center, it became, and to the most part still remains, part of the social fabric of the black community.
Awesome. Your thoughts, Councilman Moore?
Not on the churches, but when you talk about the heartbeat, yes, the church is a part of that, but also we talked about the physical part of it, where you had to take care of the patients. And we had a lot of successful black doctors in our community.
Right.
Just to name a few: Teletherio,
Right.
Hilliard, Dr. Edwards, Dr. Henry, who was a dentist, and the list goes on and on. And what I like about the majority of these people I just called lived and operated and had their clinics in the black community.
Right.
And were members of the black churches.
Yeah,
They
members
were
of the
part
black
of the
churches, that's right.
leadership structure
Right.
of many of our churches.
Yeah.
Right, and I know that one of the folks that I interviewed last year was Dr. Houston.
Dr. Houston, right?
Yeah, he
great
came in
surgeon.
as a surgeon
Great surgeon.
and had a very successcul career.
Well, he and his wife both
Yep.
had a very
She was an anesthesiologist, right?
Right,
Yes.
she was an anesthesiologist.
Okay.
And of course, the Houston name is a prominent name in both the religious circle and
Right.
the medical field in Tyler. But I think Dr. Houston was the first chief of surgery at the former East Texas Medical Center, which is now UT Tyler.
And I think Bishop Houston is with the what's the name of the Bishop Houston's church on Walton Drive? I think
Smith
they're
Temple?
related. Smith
Yes,
Temple.
they're related.
So,
Okay.
so that's that doctor preacher combination right there.
Right.
You had a doctor named Houston and a preacher by the name of Houston, and they all related. Preachers,
Yes.
quite a few of them. So that's that connection that we tried to bring out when we talked about that piece.
And I loved that last year because we were talking about the heartbeat of the community, and we were dealing with two different fields
Right.
that dealt with the heartbeat of the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Literally.
That's right.
Yes.
Literally heartbeat.
And
Yeah.
figuratively.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, moving ahead to this year,
Okay.
we want to touch on that a little bit, and then maybe while I have you both here, we'll start planning for the next couple of years as well, because that's always a thing. As soon as it's over, when I passed Councilman Moore in the hallway on the way to City Council, we were always, what are we going to do next year?
Yeah,
So,
we have to hit it.
but we'll get to that. But this year, the program is entitled Step Up, the history of our fraternities and sororities.
Right.
And this was, when you first mentioned this to me, I have to admit, I had no idea where to even begin. But it sort of came together because you called the right people and brought everyone together, and the program has taken on a life of its own. And I have to admit, I'm a little nervous because I don't know what's going to happen when that program starts.
That's a good sign.
Yeah. So I mean, that's even the person that's helping coordinate has no idea what's going to happen once the program starts. But you guaranteed me, and so did everyone else, it's going to be a great evening, and we're going to have some fun. So that's all I need to know. Tell me about.
Let me just say this. I was a little nervous. You know, I was telling somebody, I thought about this overnight when we were talking about what can we do.
Right.
And I got to thinking about what we've done in the past. And what can we do in the future? And it just popped up one night. Hey, why don't we talk about and highlight the Greeks?
Yes.
Because I didn't pledge to anything when I was growing up. I went to TJC back in '68, so I didn't pledge. But I've been to a lot of the fraternities, galas and balls that they've had, and I was very impressed. And I read a lot about their roles and what they do and how they were founded. So I said to myself, what if we do that? But my biggest problem was, who could I get involved?
Right.
To be a part of this. So I started looking around to see, you know, what connection I could make. So I called some people and said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And then I talked to you about it. And the more we talked about it and start putting it together, I said, well, this might be something that the whole community needs to see and know about it. And I am looking forward for it. And we can't give away all our good stuff that's coming at the end of the program. But I'll just tell you, if you're out there, you need to come and visit us and be with us on February the 18th. 28th, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
For the Greek show.
Right. It's going to be awesome. And Councilman Bowder, are you going to be there with us that night?
Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world if God says the same. But these sororities and fraternities are service organizations.
That's right. That's right.
You know, they're service oriented. They have their national agendas set out by their national offices, but it filters on down to the local, and they really do a lot of. They're very strong here, which has a lot to do again with the college community.
Right.
But they do a lot of service for education, the fundamentals of reading, the health initiatives within the community, entrepreneurial initiatives. I mean, the list goes on and on. If you were to take the Greek organizations out of the fray, we would be much less of a community.
That's right.
I know the times that I've had to spearhead efforts, I've always touched out to the Kappas or the Omegas or the Zetas or the Deltas or the AKAs. And they always come, always come through and always come through in their colors and in great numbers. And I think this program this year, shining the light on them, it's very deserving. Very deserving.
That's awesome. And one unique thing about this year's program, again, not to give away anything, but most of what you see in this year's program is happening live on stage. Whereas a lot of the previous programs, we've been real heavy focused on video and some of the films that we've made together. This year, a lot of what you're going to see is going to be taking place live on stage, and we're going to have our first dress rehearsal for that coming up on the 19th, and then looking forward to the 28th, we will have music and lights, and that's as far as I'm going to go in describing the program. Okay, guys, any ideas for what we can do next year? Because we need to already start planning that.
Well,
something we haven't talked about in Tyler that's going on. You know what? Ever since we started doing this, I have to share this with you.
Okay.
I sometimes on my lunch break, I just want to be by myself, so I'll drive through a fast food restaurant and grab something, and I find myself driving around North Tyler and looking at the places that you guys have told me the stories about and trying to picture it when you were a kid, you know,
Wow, that's
and
great.
just like the cut and that, I've learned so much working with you guys, and I want so much for folks to share that history because it's all part of Tyler. Tyler used to be a very different place, and we still have a long way to go.
Yes, that's true.
But Tyler used to be a very different place. And now we have a community that's together that we can talk and share these stories. And so I find myself just driving around North Tyler and trying to picture what it might have been like and to visualize the stories that you've told.
Well, I think it was not only only North Tyler, but it was West Tyler. It was East Tyler that had prominent and dominant black communities. And you're very true. Food is an important part of it.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
And so I would absolutely love next year to go into talking about restaurants or eating places that were very prevalent in yesteryear, as well as some that have come online recently.
My stomach is telling me that's a very good idea.
Very good
Valerie.
Yeah, so,
Very good
We
subject.
may have to change our venue to somewhere where we can serve some food and have some folks come out and bring
sample
some
some
food.
That sounds-
That's
that
right.
sounds good to
Ooh.
me.
Yeah.
Make sure-
I'm excited about
Now
this
we're
year.
talking.
Yeah, indeed.
This year. When we go back to the Greeks of what I was really admired about meeting with the different individuals, I can say this: all of them are proud of their colors.
Yes.
Yes, you don't mix the
that-
color. They are proud of their colors, and that's nice to how proud they hang their heads up high when they wear their colors, and that's what really impressed me about it.
Well, that's part of it.
And that's part of
yeah,
it is
yeah.
their colors and their own individual organization. So
And those colors seem to represent what it is that they do that they're proud of.
That's right.
In their
Yeah, yeah,
organization.
that's right.
It's not just about colors or loyalty or anything like that, but it's about what they had to be proud of.
yeah, and they're fine people in our community. And I'm glad to have them. Glad we're able to do it. And I
That's
just
awesome.
hope we can just fill up Liberty Hall that night.
That'll be great. I hope we do. That is February the 28th at Liberty Hall, 7 p.m. Please come if you can. Looks like we're going to have a very good crowd that night, and we want you to be a part of it. Again, that's February 28th, Liberty Hall. I must stress, this is a free program. So we want everybody that can out in the community to come and be a part of this, learn something, be entertained, and just visit and fellowship with some of your neighbors here in the city of Tyler, and let's have a great time that night.
And the square is going to be full that night. And it's always good to drive around the square, especially at night, and see lights on and see nightlife there. But I want
Absolutely.
to encourage everybody to get there early. If you can't find parking on the square, the city does have a free parking garage
Free parking.
right around the corner and down the street.
That's
right. I know.
It may take a little bit to hit that hill coming up, but all of those accommodations have been made.
That's awesome. It's going to be a great night. It'll be a great time to be in downtown Tyler, and we might also have planted the seeds for a good idea for next year.
Right,
yes.
That food.
Food,
Let's-
always a good subject.
Let's flesh that out a little bit after the program. Guys, thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you.
Bob,
Appreciate you.
thank you for your
Thank you,
concern
Bob.
and
Thank
your
you.
professionalism with what you do.
Well, thank you
Enjoy
so
working
much.
with you, man. Enjoy.